Hello, this is Peggy Kelly with the Santa Paula Times. This is Good Morning Santa Paula. And our guest today is James Mason with the City of Santa Paula. He's in charge of community services, which includes a whole bunch of departments, as well as economic development, which of course is an issue that's on our minds too, especially in the wake of the COVID pandemic. Good day to you, James. How are you?
Great, Peggy. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. It's nice to see anybody, you know what I mean? But it is good to see you, you know what I mean? It really is. And I know you've been working hard on a lot of the issues, especially now that you also are handling economic development, which only has been since what, the first of the year that you were. Tell people just in capsule what you do as far as what departments you're in charge of, so we'll get a better sense of how you can address this.
Great. Our department is community and economic development. So we capture planning, building and safety, code enforcement, and now economic development. So basically soup to nuts on development projects, anything that's coming up out of the ground, making sure that it's safe. But also now, as Peggy mentioned in January, we're doing economic development, which is actually a nice dovetail because we're responsible for development anyway, and anything that has to do with economic development is going to have some type of permitting or development associated. And generally, in most cities, that's the problem. You want to open a business,
Yes.
It takes a bit of work to get through the development process. So we're working through streamlining those processes to make it easier for businesses to operate and open. So that's really where we are.
Well, so basically, then it's more of a one-stop now, as far
Exactly,
as, you know,
exactly.
people, which really helps because, like you said, streamlining sometimes is everything. And speaking of streamlining, what's going on with our local businesses as far as them trying to start to take baby steps, as it were, for reopening? How have you been working with local businesses?
Most of it's been more reactive. I've worked with the chamber to get out and get information out to people, and we put things on the website, and we'll have some links that'll be available for folks. But the main thing is trying to keep up with what the state and what the county is requiring, and it's been a very slow unrolling of getting back to normal. And you know, anybody who's a business is probably rolling their eyes right now. That's a little bit of an understatement. I think that the challenge ends up being really the foundation of all of this is a stay-at-home order. So businesses are like, well, I can follow all the protocols and do all the things that, you know, keep people safe. But the one thing that the state and the county have been trying to push is that the more people that don't go out at all, the more we have a chance of letting this thing subside and not have as many impacts. So as things open up, what we're looking at right now is a multi-phased approach. You know, phase one, everything was closed except for essential services. Phase two, essential services are still allowed, and there's some non-essential, like retail is going to be allowed, but it's only for delivery or curbside pickup. I think the underscore in all of that is no businesses other than essential services can allow people in their business. So if you have a retail business and you're not selling things that are defined as essential, and the way the state and the county define that is 33% or more of your receipts need to be essential services. So if you have a clothing store and you sell soda and chips, that doesn't cut it, you know, or a smoke shop that sells, you know, so that's kind of the challenge. But again, they can do delivery or pickup. And, you know, the thing I'd like to mention in that's really difficult is, you know, I understand where businesses are and empathize with the challenges, because right now, if you're at home and you want to order anything, you can get it Amazon, Target, Walmart, and get it delivered to your door. But a lot of our businesses don't have an online presence. So how do you capture customers? You can't engage them. They can't engage you. What do? So, I mean, short of people that you know that you can call up. So I think a lot of businesses are trying to find new ways to be creative to create opportunities for outreach. And I'll tell you, coming out of this, a website presence for any business is going to be critical, I think, moving forward just in life. So, but one thing I do want to underscore, the fact that we do have, you know, online businesses and those things can happen. Once this starts to lift and people can get out, the thing that makes the difference, I mean, if I can get everything at home, why would I ever go out to a store again? Because of relationships, because people I know, people I like to see, businesses that I have. A good example, I think, is Miners Hardware versus Lowe's. You know, I can go into Miners Hardware and they know me, they know what I want. If they don't have it, they'll get it for me. Lowe's, I can wander wander for 2 hours and maybe never get anything because no one will help me.
Get a lot you don't need or wanted for some reason. Yeah. And we've got Frank's too, and you know they both give very personal service, and I agree with you, and that's so important, and in turn that helps our community too, which I don't know how often people appreciate that by shopping local they are actually helping take care of their own town.
Yeah. And I think that's moving forward from an economic development perspective. That's what we want to capitalize on. We've got a small town, hometown feel with personal businesses. If you want to go to Target, go to Target. But I think as we look to have a more robust economy here, it's going to be services that have that personal touch. That's why would you go anywhere else? You know,
I can only agree. Now, what are some of the guidelines? What do you think businesses might find most challenging? I know that there's a registration process. There's, you know, it's not particularly anything that's threatening or anything like that. I think maybe the state just wants to make sure that people are adhering to certain health guidelines too.
Right. It's really what it comes down to is, you know, the main guidelines right now really apply to essential services. They've been out for a while, and that's just really sanitizing, social distancing, you know, things like that. Now that we're talking about more customer interfaces, things start to unroll, especially, you know, just even curbside pickup. The idea that you're going to now have employees in a business, because before that, they weren't there at all. So now you're going to have employees, even if customers aren't coming in, you have employees. So making sure that surfaces are cleaned. If you've got one person working at a register or working in an area and you change shifts, that needs to be wiped down, things need to be cleaned. And same thing, social distancing applies for employees as well as for customers. So if you have customers that are going to pick up, you know, it's advisable to do what all the big stores are doing, like Vons or, you know, the stores that can do essential services, have that 6-foot tape and spacing and, you know, out in front of your store or, you know, wherever you're doing it to make sure people are distanced out. Outside of that, I think probably one of the bigger challenges is cash handling. You know, that becomes a big, you know, vector for people interacting with each other. So having a place where you can keep cash and keep it separate and let it sit but be able to manage it can help a lot. And having employees have gloves when they're using that. Now, the thing to keep in mind, masks and gloves are great, but when they're not changed or exchanged either after a shift, especially gloves between people. I had somebody complain about a restaurant that said the person at the counter wasn't wearing gloves. Well, if you're dealing with 30 people an hour exchanging money, it doesn't really, you have to change gloves after every person that you deal with. So it's some of these things are a little bit challenging. And I think it's, again, online, it's a good time to look at point of sale systems, even if it's just the plug in on your phone to be able to take credit card. And I know a lot of people in town pay cash, and that can be a challenge. But just to try and find new ways, it's a new world. You know, it's funny. I was talking.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was talking to somebody today and talking about, you know, some of the benefits we're going to get out of these changes because efficiencies happen, and it, you know, kind of made me reminisce about the gas crisis in the 70s. You know, we probably wouldn't have fuel efficient cars if it wasn't for that. So that was the beginning of all that. So we got to look for the good that can come out of this. And I think the businesses that are able to adapt and able to think of new ways to be creative are going to be very successful.
Absolutely. And that is a good point about the cash. You know, you almost wish there was a way that they could maybe have some sort of a rounding up system where they'll go ahead and, you know, donate the change to the Boys and Girls Club or to Spirit of Santa Paula or something like that. I mean, you know, just, and then that way there is no exchange that just goes in a jar. And of course, down the line, somebody's going to have to touch it. But yeah, it's very challenging right now. And I'm glad the city's so involved in working with the merchants. And you've been getting a pretty good reception from the merchants in the downtown.
It's been good. I mean,
we've got businesses all over. Yeah.
Considering how frustrated people are, they've been very receptive. And I think it's just the resiliency of the kind of people we have in Santa Paula. I think that the thing that's hard, you know, the conversations I have with people, you know, they're looking at other businesses that maybe are essential, but don't seem to be operating in a way that they think they could, that would be more meet the protocols better. And it's, the
Yeah.
challenge that we have, this is a health crisis. We're not a health agency. Ventura County's calling the shots and the state's counting the shots. So we're trying to do what we can that makes sense. And as I said before, I'm kind of frustrated in the sense that, people can shop online, but can't support local businesses. So, great big businesses get bigger, even despite the economic challenges,
Yeah,
and the small
absolutely.
businesses go out of business. So how do we find a way to circumvent that? Because I think a lot of people have been talking about this. The bigger challenges we're going to have aren't going to be the impacts of COVID directly. It's going to be the businesses that go out of business and people that become homeless, people that don't have income, people that don't have insurance. And, it's like with any emergency or risk, it's always the aftermath that creates the bigger problems. So,
Yeah, that's very true. Boy. Well, and speaking about employment and things like that, I know we had the issue with the Calavo warehouse. I might add that, they had issues on cruise ships. They've had issues on all sorts of places where they have had outbreaks of COVID-19. It just takes one person coming in from the outside. And when did the city, I know, has been working with Calavo and working with the county, actually. So how's that been going? I
really,
know that
when
Calavo had 35 cases reported, but they all don't live in Santa Paula, but they're spread out throughout Ventura, I believe Oxnard and Fillmore is where some of those other workers were. So that's a lot.
Right. Yeah. And what it comes down to is, you have work conditions that people are in higher proximity, and
Mhm.
and it's hard to be able to deal with clean surfaces, and people exchange restrooms, all those type of things.
Right.
When we heard that there
Working
was some
in an essential business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when we heard that there were some issues there, it was about 2 weeks ago, and I went out with code enforcement and spoke with them and talked about protocols being in place. And shortly after that, we talked to the county and said, hey, you know what? Just as a heads up, we want to think about ag workers, not only in the field, but in some of these packing houses, and how can we work with them to ensure that there's safer work conditions. And the county got right on that. And that's actually the reason why there was such a spike, is not only because of the situation and the work situation and the number of people, but because the county's testing. And that's one thing we have to be careful of is, you could have 20 people working in a place or in any environment, and there's no COVID cases because no one's been tested. But once you test, now all of a sudden you realize what actually exists. So that's one thing. They tested the facility, and they actually set up a testing at the Calavo plant. So they're doing testing there.
That was Saturday and Monday, or Monday.
They set it up on Saturdays when they opened it up. And we're also working with the county right now to hopefully next week look at opening up a testing facility at the old Kmart site.
Oh, okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
And is that going to be one of those open testing places where people can just go in and get tested? Or do you have to be referred to by a doctor or the county? Do you know offhand?
I don't know offhand. Right now, there are two facilities, one in Oxnard, one in Thousand Oaks, that you can just go to. So I'm assuming that's what they're going to do. And I think, kind of that little spike that we had may have
prompted that.
It prompted that decision.
So. Absolutely. Now, how many people actually were working at that plant? I know at one point it might have had hundreds and hundreds. I'm not sure of an exact number.
Yeah, I don't know the exact number. And that's a really good point. Maybe not a weird segue away from that, but as we're doing economic development, one of the things that we really need to do, and we're working on diligently, is to know our businesses in the community, know how many employees they have, and have the way I like to characterize it, I would love, by the end of this calendar year, to know the shoe size of every business owner in this town. We have to have relationships, because in the past, many years, the only time we've had a chance to talk to businesses is when we have a code issue or a violation or an issue related to a building. It's been a regulatory process, and I want to be, I want us from a one-stop shop to get out ahead of businesses and be able to find ways that they can be successful. Because, realistically, the best thing that we can do for businesses is get out of their way. So we can find out how we're in their way, we can do a better job. So.
Oh, I think that's great. That's a wonderful philosophy, and I know the businesses appreciate it. And uh, and it really will help the economy, the local economy, which I've got my fingers crossed, and I'm confident that once we open up and get back to normal, I think people are going to bounce back because of the fact, and this is what I keep telling myself, because they're going to be very relieved. They're going to want to spend some money locally. They're going to want to, get out, hopefully not unprotected, or not, have to adhere guidelines and keep your hands washed and all that. Now,
Oh,
James, is there anything I didn't ask you that you'd like to approach or discuss at all?
well, one thing on the economic development thing, it really tags along with what you were talking about people wanting to get back out. We're very differently situated than a lot of our neighboring communities. When you think about Ojai, where they've got the Ojai Valley Inn and the retail associated with visitors coming there, that's probably 60% of their income as a city. You look at Ventura, they've got 2 Targets and a Walmart and Pacific View Mall. You look at Camarillo, they have the outlet shops. You look at Oxnard, they've got the collection and everything else there. We don't have all of that.
Yes.
But back to what we were talking about before, we have unique experiences and a personal touch that's just been growing here as new businesses are opening. I know, and what we're working on with the chamber as we move forward and this starts to unroll and we get whatever business back to normal looks like, we need to demonstrate to this region that Santa Paula is open for business. I've been here for a little over 3 years, and the one thing that really jumped out at me is the number of people that come through this town every day that don't know this town exists. I've met probably a half a dozen people in 3 years that have either live in Ojai or live in LA and come through here all the time and have done it with their kids, with their grandparents, and never knew there was a main street, never knew there was a downtown. They were headed to where they were headed to. And short of putting a barricade on 126 and on 10th Street, we need to find ways to get people to stop and take advantage of the beauty of this community and the character of the people and what we know is wonderful about Santa Paula. And I'm all about taking other people's money all day long. We need to get them in. So anyway.
Well, you're preaching to the choir, and I appreciate it too, because that's, you're very sincere about it, and I appreciate that too. We're very lucky at City Hall. We've got a lot of people that really care and live here too, so that's wonderful. So
yeah, we've got a
James,
great team. We've got a great team, and that's, I think, the other thing that's really different about this city right now. The folks that we have, not only in our department, but throughout this city, that are really, they're here because they wanted to be here. They're here because they want to serve this community, and that's exciting. That's really exciting.
That is exciting. And they recognize the uniqueness of Santa Paula and the charm and the ambiance. I mean, Santa Paula is the center of our universe for a very good reason. So, well, I want to thank James. So thank you so much, James. And I'm delighted that I was able to introduce you to the community, as it were, on a wider basis. And we'll talk again soon, hopefully. And I want you to stay well. And once again, I'm Peggy Kelly with Good Morning Santa Paula. Be sure to visit us on www.kadYtv.net and subscribe, and that way we'll be able to bring you even more programming. And you have a good day. Stay safe, keep those hands washed, and social distancing. And thank you so much. See you next